Do you need the words?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah, Arjun, you know where it is, yeah? Yeah, if you put it record, that'd be great. Srila Prabhupada always used to begin every class by singing this song, Jaya Radha Madhava. Beautiful song by Bhaktivinoda Thakur. The mic might be a little bit loud actually. Could you just turn it down slightly?
Yeah, sure.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna. Yeah, that should be fine. I think that's fine. Thank you. Thank you, Prabhu. Jaya Radha Madhava Kundari Hari Jaya Radha Madhava Kundari Hari
Hare
afternoon. Today, initially we had planned to speak a little bit about Father's Day. So, in different parts of the world, we were going to connect it to Krishna. But in different parts of the world, there are different days that people celebrate, and generally Mother's Day and Father's Day, they're things that we celebrate. Nowadays, some of these things can become a little bit commercial, and you get Grandma's Day, Granddad's Day, your next door neighbour's dog's day, any chance to be able to sell some cards and presents at the supermarkets and that. And anyway, in different places of the world, they celebrate Father's Day on different dates. So, in England, we celebrate Father's Day usually on this weekend of June. And quite often it corresponds, or it used to correspond with the London Rath Yatra. I remember on many occasions, the London Rath Yatra was on Father's Day, which I thought was quite apt because Lord Krishna, he is the Supreme Father. He says he's the seed-giving Father of all living entities. And so that was the plan today, to try, because it's nice to think, how can we connect our everyday life to Krishna? That's what Krishna consciousness means. It means becoming conscious of Krishna in all aspects of life. Sometimes we may think, I have my material life, taking the kids to school, paying the bills, working, that's my material life. And then I have my spiritual life when I go to the temple. Right? We may think like that. That's not, I'm going to have some time for my spiritual life. But actually the art of Krishna consciousness is to realise that every moment of the day, 24 hours a day, 24/7 is the same. That is our spiritual life. We're cooking for Krishna. When we're going to work, we're using the fruits of our earnings in Krishna's service. And therefore, the art of Krishna consciousness is to try and connect everything that's going on in the world to Krishna. That's Krishna consciousness. And of course, we will all be aware of the great tragedy that took place on Thursday, I think it was Thursday, flight 171, Air India flight, and in fact ITV, a correspondent from ITV rang me up on Thursday and asked if we would be doing anything to commemorate. This was just like when it was breaking news, would we be doing anything to commemorate the victims and their families and the survivors. So I said yes, we would be doing something on Sunday. So then I was thinking, how do we connect these things? So today we're dedicating today's kirtan and today's event to the spiritual welfare of the victims, of their families and their friends who must be going through an extremely, you cannot put it into words what they're going through right now. And we may also think, well, why do these things happen? Right? If there's a God, why would something so tragic, so horrible take place? So at times like this, people will often turn to spirituality, or sometimes people will turn away from spirituality. Like Prabhupada spoke about how during World War II, the lives or the wives of the German soldiers, they were praying to God, please send our husbands home, or the mothers were praying, please send our children home. But then on the other side, the wives of the Allies and the mothers of the Allies were praying, please send my children home, send my husband home. So God's in a bit of a quandary. Right? How can you do both? War inevitably means loss of life. So sometimes we might think, well, I prayed. Why didn't what I prayed for come true? And so therefore they say that God moves in mysterious ways. Sometimes it's very hard to fathom. Krishna, he's Tri Kalagyan, which means that he's the knower of past, present and future. Even sometimes in our own life, we may look back at, we may be going through a really tough time right now. We may be going through reversals in life, tragedy may strike us in our life, and we may think, well, yeah, ultimately there's two ways. Either we try and take shelter more deeply of the Supreme, of Krishna, of our spiritual life, or we may lose faith. When tragedy befalls us, we may say, oh, this doesn't work. So inevitably we try and turn to the scriptures to try and understand these things and to deepen our faith, not lose our faith. Yeah, so today that's what we're going to be exploring. We wanted to dedicate today's prayers and events to these souls that have been taken too soon from this world, but try and understand how everything fits into a bigger plan. And it's a little hard to understand these things. But at least the one thing that we can do is we can come together and pray for those persons, because when we pray for others, that is better than praying for ourselves. If we pray and we chant in a mood of compassion, and we pray for the onward journey of these souls, then Krishna, he's more inclined to answer our prayers when we pray for others rather than praying for ourselves. Even Jesus Christ, when he was on the cross, Prabhupada used to talk about how he would pray, please, Lord, forgive them, for they know not what they do. This is the mood of a devotee, is that we're praying for others. We're unhappy to see the suffering of others. Paradukaduki. And particularly because if you saw the news, and I'm sure you have been following the news, I mean it's a huge event, that's had reverberations all around the world, reverberations within the Hare Krishna community also, and in many ways. But one thing that was interesting was it was on the news the other day, and you may have seen it, that what was pulled out of the debris and the wreckage of the plane crash was a Bhagavad Gita in Hindi, but it was one of Srila Prabhupada's Bhagavad Gitas, and they were showing it on the news. And what they were showing was that despite the intense heat which is generated from such an explosion of aviation fuel, Prabhupada's Bhagavad Gita was almost intact. A little bit charred on the outside, but on the inside it was in perfect condition. All the pictures were there. They showed it on the news in India. And so that from this, many people were, experiencing, if you like, an unexpected sense of spiritual peace and also spiritual reflection. That this Bhagavad Gita was pulled. So today we're going to speak a little bit about the Bhagavad Gita and how it can help us in all aspects of life, and particularly in times of trouble. Because we're all looking for shelter in this world, right? When times go wrong, sometimes we may take shelter of intoxication, for instance. That's a big one when things are going wrong. Or sometimes we take shelter of, we try to forget the world by maybe taking shelter of, watching a film or listening to music. We're trying to forget about what's going on. So we try and find shelter in a different way. But the ultimate shelter is Krishna. And anyway, we'll begin and then we'll elaborate as we go on. But we're going to initially just read from this verse from the Bhagavad Gita. It's chapter 14, text 4. Maybe Vasu can bring it up on the screen if he's able to. And this is in relation to Krishna being, the Supreme Father, as we started off talking about Father's Day. Okay, if everyone can repeat after me. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. 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 So, this is chapter 14, text 4 from the Bhagavad Gita. Can we have it up on the screen?
We have it on the screen.
Brilliant. I think Prashad's handing out some copies as well, but otherwise you can look on the screen. That's fine, yeah, you can wait for a book, that's fine. Sometimes also it's nice to have an actual book, you can find things online, but it's also nice to have a hard copy of the book sometimes. So in this book, it's page 685. Okay, everyone found it? Great. Okay. Sava yonishu kuntaya. Sava yonishu kuntaya. Muttaya sambhavantiya. Muttaya sambhavantiya. Tasam Brahma Mahajonir. Aham bija pradapita. Go for the key change. Savayonishu kuntaya. Muttaya sambhavantiya. Tasam Brahma Mahajonir. Aham bija pradapita. Please repeat, as in someone have a go at the verse.
Savayonishu kuntaya.
Savayonishu kuntaya. Muttaya sambhavantiya. Tasam Brahma Mahajonir. Aham bija pradapita. Savayonishu kuntaya. Muttaya sambhavantiya. Tasam Brahma Mahajonir. Aham bija pradapita. Savayonishu kuntaya. Muttaya sambhavantiya. Tasam Brahma Mahajonir. Aham bija pradapita. Any of the ladies like to have a go?
Sarvayonishu Kanteya.
Sarvayonishu kuntaya.
Muttaya sambhavantiya.
Muttaya sambhavantiya.
Tasam Brahma Mahadyonir.
Tasam Brahma Mahajonir.
Aham bija pradapita.
Aham bija pradapita. Okay, so we'll do the translation and the purport. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada ki. It should be understood that all species of life, O son of Kunti, are made possible by birth in this material nature, and that I am the seed-giving Father. Please repeat. It should be understood that all species of life, O son of Kunti, are made possible by birth in this material nature. And that I am the seed-giving Father. In this verse, it is clearly explained that the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, is the original Father of all living entities. The living entities are combinations of the material nature and the spiritual nature. Such living entities are seen not only on this planet, but on every planet, even on the highest where Brahma is situated. Everywhere there are living entities. Within the earth there are living entities, even within water and within fire. All these appearances are due to the mother, material nature, and Krishna's seed-giving process. The purport is that the material world is impregnated with living entities who come out in various forms at the time of creation according to their past deeds. Saviyo nishukuntiya mutiya sambhavantiya tasam brahma mahadyonya aham bija pratapita. It should be understood that all species of life, O son of Kunti, are made possible by birth in this material world, and that I am the seed-giving Father. Om Ajnana Timirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurumilitam Nina Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Caitanya Vallabha Dāsa Pitamena Bhutale Swam Rupakaramaya Tadati Swabhadavatika. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadada Shri Vasari Gaura Bhaktivinoda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So, yes, like we said, we're celebrating Father's Day today. And generally the reason for celebrating Father's Day, or let's be inclusive, and Mother's Day, that's in March. Why do you do that? Because it's to show thanks, right? It's to show thanks to all that the Father does, right? Of course, in one sense, every day we should be saying thank you. When we're children, we're taught to say please and thank you. I know that because my children are young now and generally they're very well mannered. But sometimes one of my children will say, water, water. And we say, what's the magic word? And then they'll say, please. And we might say, what's a nice way to say that? Daddy, can I have some water, please? Yes, very good, but only because you asked nicely. So every day, we're trying to be thankful for everything that our father, or mother, is doing for us. But of course, because sometimes we become a bit complacent, so therefore we have a special day to remind us where it's all about. Just like this week, my dad has come up to stay with me for the week, and we've been doing my back garden together. We've been laying a patio, and it involved a lot of digging, 2.5 days of just digging to start with, to get the right foundation. Because of course, to get a good foundation for anything, if you want to build up higher, you need a good foundation, right? But anyway, we did 2.5 days of digging, and then we've laid the patio, and I have to say, it was time for me to go to the temple, and my dad's still there digging. Because we had to go to the temple. So, you want to say thank you. And similarly, in the same way, Krishna, he does everything for us. He gives us the air that we breathe, food to eat, water to drink. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. He does everything for us. And in one sense, we often use this analogy that, maybe a child, like today my children bought me some gifts, right? But the analogy often is given that maybe the gifts that have been given to the Father's paid for anyway, indirectly. And maybe given a present that you don't need, like maybe a child will buy a father a tie to go to work. But the father's got lots of ties. He doesn't really need another tie. And it was his money anyway. But still, when the child buys a gift for the father, it melts the father's heart. Oh, just see, my boy has bought me a tie. And so it's all about love. It's about an offering of love. So Krishna doesn't need anything from us. Everything belongs to Krishna. Aham savasya prabhavo mata savam pravartate. Krishna's the source of everything material and spiritual. Nothing belongs to us, me and mama. We come into this world with nothing, or we come into this world with a body, but we leave this world without our body. Everything was here before we appeared, and everything will remain here when we go. Nothing belongs to us, everything ultimately belongs to God. But we make a little offering to Krishna to say thank you. To say thank you for everything that we do. And so in essence, that's what Father's Day is. So that's what the process of Krishna consciousness is. It's learning to be grateful and to see Krishna in all aspects of life and see how we wouldn't be here without Krishna and how he's there at every moment of our life. And it's therefore this is Bhakti Yoga is the yoga of gratitude, to be grateful to Krishna. Thank you for everything that you do. And the Bhagavad Gita, one of the greatest things that Krishna does for us is to give us the Bhagavad Gita. Because the Bhagavad Gita is, in one sense, it is like our guidebook for life. When I was younger, one time for my birthday or Christmas, I was given a book, the SAS Survival Handbook. I never read it, to be honest. I had it. Even when I went to university, I remember I took with me the SAS Survival Handbook. Like a guide for how are you going to survive if you're out in the wilderness. The wilderness of freshers, halls of residence. But the Bhagavad Gita is much more than that. It's a guidebook for life. Like we often give the analogy that when you buy a new product, it comes with the instructions. If you want to get the most out of the new product, then you've got to read the instruction manual. Otherwise, you only ever... It's like on my car. It's got so many functions, and I don't know how to use most of it. They even say that we only use a very small amount of our brain. Right? There's 75% of our brain which we don't really use. So if we want to get the most out of this material world, if we want to achieve our true potential, and I mean the true potential of the soul, then we have to understand the Bhagavad Gita. So what is the Bhagavad Gita? Well, the Bhagavad Gita, what does Gita mean? Song. Yeah, and Bhagavad, what does Bhagavad mean? Yeah, in essence it translates as God's song. What were you going to say, Dan and Joe?
One who possesses all opulences.
Yeah, it pertains to Bhagavan. And Bhagavan is a name for God, which means one who possesses all opulences. So there are 6 opulences. Whatever we're looking for in life, they are categorized within 6 general opulences. So there's beauty. Everyone wants to be beautiful, right? We spend time in the mirror trying to make ourselves look pretty. As we get older, it takes a lot longer to make ourselves look pretty. What is the makeup of a devotee? The ornamentation is tulsi bead, tilak, and our kuntimala, our neck beads. These are the ornamentation of Vaishnava. But yes, we all want to be beautiful. We want to be famous. I mean, not everyone, but these are the things that people are chasing. Some people want to be beautiful. Some people want to be famous. Some people want to have knowledge. They want to be knowledgeable. Beauty, fame, knowledge, renunciation. That's not something that we generally chase. We don't want to be renounced. But that is something which is attractive, isn't it? If you see someone that, let's say you go around to someone's house, like recently I went to a friend's house in Scotland, they're devotees, and they had a Sunday program like this in their house. And they invited all these devotees round and they just let people use their house as if it was their own home. And I was in great admiration of that. I was thinking, oh, if everyone's coming into my house, I'd be like, oh, be careful, don't spill that, or make sure your child doesn't draw on the wall, or don't drop that on the carpet. It's like, because we're attached, it's, oh, my house, you know? I've worked hard for my house. I'm not renounced. But I was in admiration that they were just letting people, like, you know, sometimes people say, come in. Mi casa es tu casa, something like that, right? My house is your house. So renunciation, it's attractive. It's an attractive thing. So we've got beauty, knowledge, beauty, fame, knowledge, renunciation, strength. We go to the gym to get a six-pack, or, you know, big muscles, or, you know, to keep ourselves toned. Strength. And finally, wealth. These are the 6 opulences. Beauty, fame, knowledge, renunciation, strength, and wealth. So one who possesses all of these things in full, because someone can have a lot of strength, someone can have a lot of wealth. Like Elon Musk is one of the wealthiest men in the world. And we're talking about the recent fallout between Donald Trump and Elon Musk. They're saying Donald Trump is arguably the most powerful man in the world. So power is a type of strength. And Elon Musk, he is one of the wealthiest men in the world. But they had a kind of a public falling out because they're both very powerful men, you know? You get like 2 kind of alpha men in the room, you know, they clash. Sometimes see that. You see stags fighting. They come together, they've got the big, you know, antlers on and they're fighting, you know, because it's like, hey, this room's not big enough for the 2 of us, you know? That was the old Clint Eastwood thing, right? This town's not big enough for the both of us, you know? But you may get someone who's very powerful, but you cannot say there is someone that possesses all power, all beauty, all knowledge, all fame, all strength, all renunciation. The only person that can claim to possess all of those things is Bhagavan. That is Krishna. So yes, Bhagavad Gita is the song of Bhagavan, the song of God. Srila Prabhupada said for a spiritual tradition to be authentic, it has to have, or has to be based on revealed scripture. So the Christians, they have the Bible. The Muslims, they have the Quran. The Jewish, they have the Torah. The Buddhists, they have the Lotus Sutras. And the Vaishnavas, you could broadly say the Hindus, the Bible of the Hindus is the Bhagavad Gita. But the point is that the principles of religion, they cannot be just concocted by man. It is said in the Srimad Bhagavatam that the principles of religion are given by God. Dharman tu sakshat bhagavat pranitam. They're the laws of God. We talk about sometimes, the laws of nature, the laws of physics. Right? Someone discovers something. Einstein, or, let's say Newton, he discovered the law of gravity. Right? But he just discovered something that was there already. We give a Nobel Prize to the person who discovered the law of gravity. Why not give God the Nobel Prize? He created the law of gravity. So if we're talking about the laws of nature, the laws of the universe, ultimately there's a lawmaker. That's Krishna. And the Bhagavad Gita is not just a book to read. We might sometimes say, yeah, I've read the Bhagavad Gita. I've read the Bhagavad Gita. Like I've asked Dhananjaya, I think Dhananjaya has probably read the Bhagavad Gita like 30 times or something, right? How many?
Probably over 100.
Over 100 times. Wow. Amazing.
And I still can't.
I still can't fathom it. Yeah, but it's a good point because the Bhagavad Gita, it's a living book. It's not just like, yeah, I've read it now. Like you might read, who's a famous author right now? Richard Osman. he became famous as an author. You know, people reading his books. Yeah, I've read it. How many times are you going to read a book by an author? But Bhagavad Gita, Dhananjay's read it about 100 times. Now, this is not true of Dhananjay Prabhu, but one time a gentleman said to Srila Prabhupada, he said, I can recite the whole Bhagavad Gita in 48 minutes. And actually, that's pretty good, reciting the whole Bhagavad Gita. You can read, usually every time it's Gita Jayanti, it's the appearance day or the advent of the Bhagavad Gita, I usually read the whole Bhagavad Gita. That's once a year on that day. And it takes, just to read the translations, it takes something about 2 hours. Anyway, this man said, I can recite the whole Bhagavad Gita in 48 minutes. And he was expecting Prabhupada to say, oh, very nice, very good. And Prabhupada said, he said, very good. He said, but can you live Bhagavad Gita for 48 minutes? So yeah, the Bhagavad Gita, yes, we have to read it, but the main thing is that we have to live the Bhagavad Gita. And Srila Prabhupada said, if you can understand one verse of the Bhagavad Gita, you will go back home, back to Godhead, back to Krishna. So yes, the Bhagavad Gita comes to life when we try to live the Bhagavad Gita. That's the difference between what is known as Gyan and Vigyan. Gyan means like theoretical knowledge, book knowledge. I can recite the verse. I can say, you are not the body, you're the spirit soul. But then at home I'm spending 2 hours in the mirror doing my hair. There's not much of it now, or doing a facial. And listen, there's nothing wrong with looking after the body. We also have to look after the body. But if we get so carried away with looking after the body, but we neglect the soul, that is like polishing the bird cage and forgetting to feed the bird. Yeah, you've got to keep the bird cage clean, because otherwise the bird will become ill. But if you've got such a healthy, shiny bird cage, but you forget to feed the birds, ultimately it's a waste of time. So then, realized knowledge means when we try and follow the teachings of the Bhagavad Gita, that is called Vigyan. So therefore that means we have to hear the instruction, we take it to heart, in other words, we meditate upon it. So we hear the Bhagavad Gita, we take it to heart, we meditate upon it. How does this apply to me? And then we act upon it. In other words, we put it into practice, and then we share it with others. This is the full process. Not that it goes in one ear and out the other. Sometimes it might be like that in a class. We hear a class, and sometimes at the time it's like, yeah, that was a great class. And then tomorrow we say, what was the class about? Oh, I can't remember. It's something about 48 minutes. Something about looking in the mirror, making yourself look beautiful. Something about that. They say if you really want to learn something, you have to teach it to others. That's the best way to learn something. So we hear the instruction, we take it to heart, we act upon it, and we share it with others. That's why sometimes at the end of the class we ask for a reflection. What was your reflection? What made an impact on you? Reflect it back. So this is Srila Prabhupada speaking from the Bhagavad Gita. What is the importance of the Bhagavad Gita? Srila Prabhupada says, if one adopts the principles enunciated in Bhagavad Gita, he can make his life perfect and make a permanent solution to all problems of life. I mean, if I ask you now, what are your problems in life? I mean, we could go on for days just talking about, sometimes I look at my to-do list, and at the end of the day, my to-do list's just got bigger. I haven't ticked anything off my to-do list. It's just remembering other things that I've got to do. It's like, my God, all problems. But I've got my problems, you've got yours, everyone's got their problems. But the Bhagavad Gita, Prabhupada says, if we adopt the principles in the Bhagavad Gita, we can make our life perfect, make a permanent, not a temporary solution, a permanent solution to all problems of life. And then Prabhupada said, this is the sum and substance of the entire Bhagavad Gita. Yeah. This is taken from a purport from the Srimad Bhagavatam. If one actually wants happiness, one must go to the spiritual world. The material world is characterized by a struggle for existence. It's a struggle being in this material world. And survival of the fittest is a well-known principle. But the poor souls of this material world do not know what is survival and who is fit. Survival does not mean that one should die. Survival means that one should not die, but enjoy an everlasting, blissful life of knowledge. This is survival. The Krishna consciousness movement is meant to make every person fit for survival. Indeed, it is meant to stop the struggle for existence. The Srimad Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita give definite directions on how to stop the struggle for existence and how to survive in eternal life. The Sankirtan movement, therefore, is a great opportunity. Now listen to this. Simply by hearing Bhagavad Gita and chanting the Hare Krishna mantra, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, one becomes completely purified. Thus the struggle for existence ceases and one goes back home, back to Godhead. So any question one may have about life, spiritual life, can be answered in the Bhagavad Gita to our full satisfaction. And the purpose of this human form of life is given in the Vedanta Sutra. It's said, Atata Brahma Jigyasa, which means that now I have the human form of life, which is reached after many millions of lives in this material world, at which point one gets the human form of life. So now I have the human form of life. Now it is time to inquire into the ultimate purpose of life. What is life for? What is the point? Some people say the point of life is to eat, drink, and be merry. Right? Okay, someone else. What's the purpose of life? Don't give me the brainwashed Hare Krishna version. Just give me, what's the purpose of life?
To enjoy.
To enjoy, yeah, definitely. Put your hands up if you want to be happy, you want to enjoy. Yeah, that's our nature. We're Anandamaya Vyasa, we're pleasure seeking by nature. We want to enjoy. Okay, what's another goal of life? Get a good job, yeah. Yeah. And in order to get a good job, that means you have to do well in your studies. You've got to pass all your exams, do all this, get a good job. Yeah, sometimes it's just, you just want to be comfortable. It's like, I don't want to be like super wealthy. I'm not looking to be a billionaire. But it might be nice just to be able to be comfortable enough, I can pay my bills, pay off my mortgage, be able to go on a nice holiday once or twice a year, have time to practice my spiritual life, right? One of the biggest wealth is to have time. We often talk about this, but they say when you're young, you have time and you have your health, but you don't have any money. When you're in your middle age, you've got money, you've got your health, but you don't have any time. You're too busy raising a family or whatever. And when you get older, you've got time, you've got money, but you don't have your health. Very rare, Sometimes people, they retire, and then as soon as they retire, it's like they've been building up this whole time, saving all their earnings, and sometimes people die within, a couple of years of retirement. It's like, so what is that? Is that the ultimate goal of life? No, it's not the ultimate goal of life. The ultimate goal of life is to solve all problems of life and go back home, back to Godhead, and to be conscious of Krishna. Ultimately, if one is conscious of Krishna at the time of death, Krishna says one doesn't come back again to this material world. One attains one's true spiritual identity. That also doesn't mean that we have to wait till the end of this life before we achieve it. No, because when one becomes Krishna conscious, one realizes that there's no difference between the material world and the spiritual world. The spiritual world isn't just a geographical place, it's a state of consciousness. We can be in the spiritual world right here in the material world, if we're in the right state of consciousness. Because the spiritual world is characterized by just being conscious of Krishna. Everything's being done for the pleasure of Krishna. And similarly, as we're serving Krishna, Krishna is serving us. It's a reciprocal relationship based upon love. We serve Krishna out of love, and when Krishna sees that we're serving him, he serves us. And like this, it goes on ad infinitum. Often material relationships have a beginning and end. Well, not often. They definitely have a beginning and an end. Even if you find the person that your soulmate, as they say, you may be with the person for the whole life. But at some point, we have to give up this material body. And that's painful if we're in material consciousness. But for a person who has come to realize, I'm not the body, I'm the soul, and realizes that, Aham Brahmasmi, I'm not the body, I'm the soul, and this soul has neither beginning nor end. It can never be killed, nor burned by fire, nor moistened by water, nor withered by the winds. For the soul is neither birth nor death at any time. And therefore, for someone who is in this consciousness, they see that the death is just like changing the body. Of course, this is a very high level. But when we come to understand that, for someone who is, it's like I'm serving Krishna in this body. When I leave this body, I will continue to serve Krishna somewhere else, but I'll have a better body. This is a high level. But yes, for sometimes we may think, well, what's the point of the Bhagavad Gita, Well, if the goal of life is just to eat, drink and be merry, well, we may say, well, there's no point to the Bhagavad Gita. But actually, you could also argue that even if you just want to have a better life materially, we're better off practicing the teachings of the Bhagavad Gita. Because if we lead a more sattvic life, we're more in the mode of goodness, we're cleaner, we're truthful, we're, diligent, Mode of goodness means you do your duty. So even if you want to be successful in the material world, let's say you want to be successful in your job, you've got to be committed, right? You've got to be at work every day. You can't be taking days off. If you want to go to university, you can't just take a day off whenever you like, because that may be the day that you miss a really important lesson, and then you won't know when that comes up in class. So even if you just want to live a better material life, it's good to practice the teachings of the Bhagavad Gita. It helps us to live a more sattvic life, or truthful, like if you want to get ahead in your job, if you want to get a promotion, they're looking for people who are committed, people who turn up every day, people who are working hard. If you cannot concentrate on your job because you're just your mind is elsewhere. So following the teachings of the Bhagavad Gita, like we said, reiterating the point, helps us to be better materially. But what to speak of spiritually? The point is, if we're going to get kicked out of this material body at some point, which we all are, and we don't know when that's going to be. These tragedies, like we're speaking about, who thought? We saw some of the videos online, people posting a little Instagram, video. Who thought? So we really don't know how long we've got in this material world. None of us. None of us. Prabhupada one time said, a journalist challenged Prabhupada because he was giving the sannyas order of life to some of his disciples, and they were young men, 25 years old, and they said, why are you giving sannyas to these young boys? Sannyas shouldn't be taken until one is, 50 or over. And Prabhupada said, they said, this should be done in old age. And Prabhupada said, what is old age? He said, how can you say, he challenged this reporter who was a young person, in their 20s. He said, can you say that you will live longer than me? Prabhupada was, in his late 70s, early 80s. He said, can you say that you will live longer than me? And the person had to say, no, I cannot stay. So we have a finite amount of time in this body. So one of the things that we learn from this is, I saw a little post, that one thing is we should really take advantage, Use that time to tell your loved ones that you love them. Use that time wisely. Tell your loved ones you love them. Spend quality time, spend less time on the phone, scrolling Facebook or whatever it is. Spend time with your loved ones. And particularly as devotees, spend time cultivating Krishna consciousness. Spend time reading the Bhagavad Gita, spend time chanting, spend time cultivating our spiritual life. Because if one, cultivates, then we have a chance to be able to remember Krishna when, at the time of death. So the Bhagavad Gita, yes, it's a guidebook for life, it's a guidebook for death. And there's 7 really nice verses. If you read the introduction to the Bhagavad Gita, there's what's known as the Gita Mahatmya. These are 7 verses spoken by Lord Shiva, glorifying the Bhagavad Gita. So these are really nice. Let me just read these to you. If one properly follows the instructions of Bhagavad Gita, one can be freed from all the miseries and anxieties of life. One will be freed from all fear in this life, and one's next life will be spiritual. We've given this example before, but if you're wanting to buy a product, right, you might look at the reviews online. What are the Trustpilot reviews? If you're buying a bed or something, and someone says, "No, this bed, it broke within a week. The mattress was, it was lopsided. No, I'm not going to buy that bed." But these are 7 verses glorifying the Bhagavad Gita from the best of all Vaishnavas, Vaishnavanam Vital Shambhu, Lord Shiva. Okay, this is number 2. If one reads Bhagavad Gita very sincerely and with all seriousness, then by the grace of the Lord, the reactions of his past misdeeds will not act upon him. Number 3. And these, as I said, this is in the introduction to the Bhagavad Gita. Prabhupada translates these verses. Number 3. One may cleanse himself daily by taking a bath in the water. But if one takes a bath even once in the sacred Ganges water of the Bhagavad Gita, for him, the dirt of material life is altogether vanquished. So yes, we can cleanse our body by having a shower, but we can cleanse our soul, cleanse our consciousness by taking a bath in the Bhagavad Gita. Number 4, but because Bhagavad Gita is spoken by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, one need not read any other Vedic literature. One need only attentively and regularly hear and read Bhagavad Gita. Okay, number 5. One who drinks the waters of the Ganges attains salvation. So what to speak of one who drinks the nectar of the Bhagavad Gita? Bhagavad Gita is the essential nectar of the Mahabharata, and it is spoken by the Lord himself, the original Vishnu. Number 6. This Gita Upanishad, Bhagavad Gita, is the essence of all the Upanishads, and it is just like a cow. And Lord Krishna, who is famous as a cowherd boy, is milking the cow. Arjuna is just like a calf, and learned scholars and pure devotees are to drink the nectarian milk of Bhagavad Gita. So when you have the calf, then the mother produces more milk. When the calf is there, the mother gives her milk more freely. So Krishna he's giving the Bhagavad Gita, but because Arjuna, he was there, he's bringing this nectar out of Krishna. And then this 7th one, I love this one. This one is just like, when there's so much division in the world, which there is, if you just put on the news, there's fighting between Iran and Israel, there's fighting between Russia and Ukraine, there's fighting between Israel and Palestine, there's fighting in Northern Ireland right now. I mean, fighting between India and Pakistan, it just goes on and on and on. Now listen to this. Let there be one scripture only, Bhagavad Gita. Let there be one God for the whole world, Sri Krishna. Let there be one prayer, the chanting of his name. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. And let there be one work only, the service of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Yeah. We have a lot more to say, but I'm not going to speak for too long. I'm just going to speak a couple more minutes and then we're going to open it up for some reflections. But yes, the Bhagavad Gita, there are 700 verses, 18 chapters. The first 6 chapters of the Bhagavad Gita, they deal with karma yoga, which is performing one's duty but giving up the fruits. You know, how to work but giving up the fruits. This is kind of like an overview of the first 6 chapters. How to live in this world, to live and act, but give up the fruits of one's action. Then you have the second 6 chapters, which are like the heart of the Bhagavad Gita. And this is dealing with... Sorry, when I said the first 6 chapters of Karma Yoga, there's Karma Yoga, Jnana Yoga, and Dhyana Yoga. These are the first 6 chapters, sorry. Yeah, so Karma Yoga is dealing with performing one's duty, but giving up the fruits. Then there's Jnana Yoga, realizing one is not the body, and renouncing one's activities. And then you have Dhyana, or Ashtanga Yoga. This is, like the process of calming the body, calming the mind, so that one can absorb oneself in thoughts of the Supreme. So then the second 6 chapters, they're the heart of the Bhagavad Gita, they're about bhakti. And this is doing one's duty for Krishna, loving devotional service. And then you have the third 6 chapters, which elaborate on the first 6 chapters and then they conclude. So, why do you have bhakti in the middle of the Bhagavad Gita? You could say that logically you've got, we're culminating at the end. But in one sense, the culmination is there in the middle. Or the essence of the Bhagavad Gita is in the middle 6 chapters. These are the chapters dealing with pure devotional service to Krishna. And the reason it's described that the 6 chapters are like the heart of the Bhagavad Gita is because it's kind of almost like they're hidden. It's like a secret, within the Bhagavad Gita. Just like if you have something very valuable, you don't put it on display to everyone. It's kind of like you keep it hidden away a little bit, something very valuable. And so this is the most intimate part of the Bhagavad Gita, is loving devotional service to Krishna. And so therefore it's kind of protected on both sides. And the reason also for that is that it's described that by performing loving devotional service to Krishna, he's back to Vatsalya. He's back to Vatsala. This is Krishna's supreme quality, is that he's conquered by the love of his devotees. So if one performs love and devotional service, Krishna is conquered by that love and he's controlled by that love. Which is why we see that Krishna is driving the chariot of Arjuna. The chariot driver wasn't considered a very high position in society. It's like being the chauffeur in one sense, The person in the back, that's the VIP. The chauffeur is like, no, they're driving around the VIP. They have to do whatever the VIP tells them. So the chariot driver isn't the high position. It's the person on the chariot. But yet Krishna is acting as the chariot driver for Krishna. Because he's conquered by Arjuna's love. And therefore, the devotee can control Krishna by their love. And therefore, this bhakti isn't given so freely. It's not given so easily. Because if we're not ready for it, we might abuse that power, if you like. Yes. So therefore, the 6 chapters, the second 6 chapters, they deal particularly with bhakti, or loving devotional service to Krishna. I've lost mine. Oh yes. Anyway, I'm not going to speak too much more because time is going on. But we started off speaking about how Krishna is the Supreme Father of all living entities. It is Father's Day today. And we said the reason we celebrate it is to say thank you and to recognize all that the Father does for us. So in the same way, Krishna is the Supreme Father and he is doing everything for us. This is a way of saying thank you to Krishna and being grateful for everything that he does. We spoke about how from the wreckage of the Flight 171, they found this Bhagavad Gita. And that therefore people were taking some solace that from this, the Bhagavad Gita was taken. And therefore we were talking about the greatest gift that the Father gives us. In this sense, Krishna is the Bhagavad Gita. And therefore we were talking about the importance of the Bhagavad Gita. And we're just going to conclude with, and we spoke about how the Bhagavad Gita can solve all problems of life. That is what Srila Prabhupada said. And we'll just finish now with this verse from the Bhagavad Gita. This is chapter 18, text 78. This is like the conclusion of the Bhagavad Gita. Or again, another review of the Bhagavad Gita. Okay. Yatra Yogeshwara Krishna, Yatra Pato Dano Dara, Tatra Shriya Vijayo Bhutya, Dhruva Nitya Matya Mama. Wherever there is Krishna, the master of all mystics, and wherever there is Arjuna, the supreme archer, there will also certainly be opulence, victory, extraordinary power, and morality. That is my opinion. So we spoke at the beginning that when times of trouble come to us in life, we can either go one of two ways. We can either lose our faith. Why has this happened? Why has this taken place in my life? And we may lose faith. Or we can use it as a chance to go deeper. And we can pray to Krishna, please, help me. Help me to understand why this has happened. Help me to understand the bigger picture. Help me to understand the deeper purpose. And know for certain that Krishna says, if we always keep Krishna with us and Arjuna, so if we're always in the association of Krishna and devotees, there will be four things. I always remember this over. Opulence, victory, extraordinary power, and morality. If we always keep Krishna and the devotees by us, and we live by the principles enunciated in the Bhagavad Gita. So we'll stop there. Srila Prabhupada ki, Granthara Srimad Bhagavad Gita as it is ki. So I thought I'd see if there are any reflections or any questions, either in relation to what we've been speaking about.
Do Indians get in touch with God because of finding the Bhagavad Gita in the wreckage?
No, they ran up on the Thursday because obviously it was a huge event, huge tragedy, and they wanted to see if we were doing anything to commemorate. So there was some footage, for instance, on the evening news on Thursday in one temple, and they were doing a kind of a group prayer, and they were offering to the deities, to pray for the victims or to pray for the survivors. We all know, seat 11A, there was one survivor, but particularly also those who have been left behind. So they got in touch to see if we were doing anything to commemorate or to honour, and so we said yes, we were doing something today. And obviously they wanted, it was from ITV Time Teas, so local news. Yeah, like that.
Jai Krishna.
Hare Krishna. So are there any questions? Dhananjaya, comments?
Thanks for a very nice, relevant class.
Thanks, Dhananjaya.
You were saying, or Srila Prabhupada was saying that everything can be solved by reading Bhagavad Gita. Krishna gives a lot of instructions and a lot of knowledge in the Bhagavad Gita. So how do you know what to utilize from that from any given point in time in your life?
Yeah, that's a good question. Sometimes it can be overwhelming, right? I mean, there are 700 verses, you know, and there are sometimes in the Bhagavad Gita even may appear to be some contradictions. Or it may even appear to be that there are things that I just can't follow. So how do we know which instructions to apply in our life? Have I understood your question correctly? Well, ultimately, the last instruction is the most relevant. If you're speaking to someone, you might say, I tell you what, I might say to Vasu Shresh, okay, we're doing this in the temple, I need you to clean all this and do this, could you do this? And then I'll say, actually, I tell you what, Vasu Shresh, scrap all that, let's go out on Harinam and we'll do everything else later. Right, so that instruction is the most relevant because it's the final one, right? So the final instruction of the Bhagavad Gita we find in chapter 18, 1866, Sarvadharman Parityajam Ekam Sharanam Vrajam. Abandon everything and just surrender unto me. That's what Krishna says. Forget everything in life and just surrender unto me. Now we may think, well, that's a bit of a tall order. I can't do that. I can't just surrender everything to Krishna. So, for me, I like in chapter 12, Krishna kind of says, look, listen, this is what you're aiming for, but right now, if you can't do that, do this. I'll read the verses in a minute. If you can't do that, do this. So in other words, in spiritual life, there's always the next step. This is a little bit of a side tangent, but you know, sometimes you go on YouTube and you get caught in a kind of a YouTube like rabbit hole or whatever. You watch a video and then that leads you to watch this bit. So a few weeks ago I started watching some videos on mountaineering, right? Climbing Mount Everest. Somehow or another, and I was watching these videos of people who had like vlogged themselves climbing up Mount Everest. And I found myself thinking, yeah, I'd like to do Mount Everest. I'd like to, you know, it's completely ridiculous, you know, I'm not a mountaineer, I've never climbed a mountain in my life, but I started watching these videos thinking, yeah, I could do that, I'd like to do that. Anyway, the point is, by watching the video, one of the most important things is, you have to follow, when climbing Mount Everest, the Sherpas, they go out and they set the route first. There's a clear route, which they do. And the Sherpas, they go and climb this route without any ropes. They go and attach all the lines. And everyone else who goes to climb it later on in the season, they go and do it. They follow in the footsteps of the Sherpas. That's the way to do it. You know, there's someone who's been there before you, and you follow that. So there's the next step. So in spiritual life, the goal is right over there. But I think it was Confucius said, every long journey starts with the first step. So in spiritual life, we always need to know what is the next step. You know? Okay, I may not be able to chant 16 rounds of the Hare Krishna mantra every day right now, but I can certainly chant 1 round. You know? And then we have to think, well, what's my next step? Okay, maybe now I could start chanting 2 rounds. You know, maybe I could start reading Bhagavad Gita for 5 minutes every day and work up to half an hour or an hour. So we always need to know what is the next step in spiritual life. Because if you try and stay where you are, you reach a plateau. Unfortunately, what happens in Kali Yuga is advancing all the time, and we get overtaken. It's like if you try and stop, if you're stuck on an escalator that's going down, because Kali Yuga is going down, it's degrading society. People are becoming more and more materialistic, more and more addicted to intoxication, or become more and more degraded in their habits. That's like an escalator that's going down. Now, if you're trying to go up the escalator, have you ever tried to run up an escalator that's going down? When you were younger, right, you might have done it in a shopping centre and then the security guards come in, hey, hey, stop doing that. You're not allowed to do that. But you can do it, particularly if you run really hard. But can you imagine in rush hour in London on the tube, the escalator's going down, but everyone's also running down the escalator. And can you imagine you're trying to go up the escalator where everyone's coming down? Can you imagine how hard that is? That's in one sense a little bit like what it's like trying to make spiritual advancement in Kali Yuga. And then also, if you're on the tube in London or even the metro in Newcastle, let's make it relevant to us, there are adverts on the side of the metro, right? Send your child to this school, or go to the theatre and watch this, or buy this. So if you just turn for a moment and start reading the instructions, you're going down again. So in other words, if you get distracted, very, very quickly you go backwards. So in other words, we have to always be going forward in spiritual life. Always going forward. And for that we need the association of devotees. And we find someone who's just a little bit further at Mount Everest, for the sake of the analogy. Okay, this person's gone through this part, now on that part. How do I get there? How did you get there? Well, I'll tell you. Yeah, I was where you were at that point, but you just need to do this, this and that. So that's how we make spiritual advancement. We just find out what's my next step. And the good thing is that, or depending on how you look at it, you can summit Mount Everest. Sorry, watched all these videos. You can reach the summit of Mount Everest. But actually you can never reach the summit of Krishna consciousness. Because the more Krishna conscious you become, the more the genuine humility appears in the heart that I'm not Krishna conscious. I don't know anything about Krishna. I have no love for Krishna. In the beginning we might think, oh yeah, I'm quite advanced actually. I'm making a lot of progress. I'll probably have gone, I'll be a pure devotee this time next week. But the more we hang around, right, Dan and Jaren, is it not? Like when we first joined, we kind of think, a couple of years I'll be a pure devotee. And
when I joined the temple, I said I'll be a pure devotee in 15 years. That was about 40 odd years ago. I'm disappointed have to inform you that I haven't reached that platform. That doesn't mean that you don't make advancement, because even to maintain what you're doing in Krishna consciousness means that you're making an advancement. So, in the Bhagavad Gita, there's a lot of reference to some very high levels of consciousness. Just because you haven't reached that doesn't mean you're not making an advancement.
Yeah, thanks, Dr. Joe. That's words of wisdom and experience there. Please go on.
No, I was just saying about something else, because you're divvying up the 6 chapters of I've heard devotees do this in the classes.
Yeah.
But in the 18th chapter, you've got the 3 important verses of which are concerned with Bhakti Yoga.
Yeah.
In the first purport of the 18th chapter, Prabhupada actually doesn't divvy up the Bhagavad Gita like that. He says there's a thread of Bhakti Yoga going through the whole thing.
Yeah.
So you can see it like that if you want to.
Yeah.
Well.
No, it's true. It's true. Some of the most important verses are there in the 18th chapter. And then, of course, you could also argue that manmana bhavamana, so that verse is twice. And it appears earlier on in chapter
934.
9.
Yes, 9, yeah. It first appears in chapter 9, and then it's repeated again, slightly different, but virtually the same in chapter 18. But yes, that's a good point. And ultimately, like we said, the supreme instruction is Savadam and Parichajana. But just coming to this point about if we might think, I can't be right there, I can't do that right now, I'm not a pure devotee, how do I reach there? So in relation to that, chapter 12, it's really nice. There's a series of verses in chapter 12, starting with chapter 8. So Krishna says, just fix your mind upon me, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and engage all your intelligence in me. Thus you will live in me always without a doubt. Now that's the highest. Just fix your mind upon me. That's the highest. Always thinking of Krishna, and never forget Krishna. This is the essence of everything. So you might think, well, I can't just always think of Krishna. So then in the next verse, Krishna says, my dear Arjuna, this is number 9 now, O winner of wealth, if you cannot fix your mind upon me without deviation, then follow the regulative principles of Bhakti Yoga. In this way, develop a desire to attain me. So if we cannot always think of Krishna, okay, no problem, then do this. Then just follow the regulative principles of Bhakti Yoga. This way you'll develop a desire to attain me. Now you might say, but I'm trying to follow, but I can't follow all the principles of Krishna consciousness. Krishna says, no problem. If you cannot do that, chapter 10, next verse, verse 10. If you cannot practice the regulations of Bhakti Yoga, then just try to work for me. Because by working for me, you will come to the perfect stage. In other words, do some devotional service. Come to the temple. I remember I used to go to the temple as a student, and before I would go to the temple, I would have a cigarette, before I went in. And sometimes they weren't cigarettes that you could buy over the counter. And I would go in, but I couldn't follow everything outside, but I would go into the temple and I would do some service. I would clean the floor, I would wash the pots, I would serve prasadam, So yes, if you cannot practice the regulations, then just try to work for me. Because by working for me, you'll come to the perfect stage. And then Krishna says in the next verse, 11, if you're unable to work in this consciousness of me, then try to act giving up all results of your work. Try to be self-situated. So give some charity, Do something charitable, Give to a charitable cause. Give to the temple, Okay, I can't even do any service. Okay, but let me make a donation to the temple. Let me give up the fruits of my work. Let me put a donation in the donation box. Let me sponsor the feast for next week. Let me sponsor the flowers. Give up the results. And then Krishna says in the next verse, verse 12, if you cannot take to this practice, then engage yourself in the cultivation of knowledge. Better than knowledge, however, is meditation. Better than meditation is renunciation of the fruits of action. For by such renunciation, one can attain peace of mind. So, in other words, there's no excuse. There's no excuse. There's always something we can do for Krishna. And it's encouraging, right? It's not just like, right, you've got to do this, but I can't do that, tough. No. What's the next step? What's my next step? And the best thing is if we associate with devotees, we will be encouraged always to take that next step. Is that okay, Dhananjay? Did that answer your question? We went off a little bit, but I'm just trying to make it relevant to everyone, Thank you, that's a great question. Any other questions or comments or reflections before we move on to the next part of the event? Vasu Shreshwar.
As you were speaking about Father's Day and Krishna being the father, it just came to my mind that Krishna is just not our father, but he is the most merciful father, because we are those children who turned our face against Krishna, but still he's looking after us. So in my opinion, I feel like he's the most merciful father.
Yeah, it's amazing. Just speaking from, I've been given these analogies for years about, just like when the son buys a gift for the father. And I used to say these things, and I wasn't a father, Parents in the audience are probably thinking, what on earth do you know? You're a monk. What do you know about, children and this and that? So I used to but now I've got a little bit of, a slight bit of experience. It's frustrating bringing up children. It's like, my goodness, it's hard work. They don't listen to what you say. They're supposed to have been in bed at 8 o'clock. They're still running around at 10 o'clock at night. For God's sake, get into bed. And then, my son won't wake up for school during the week. Saturday morning, right, he was up at 6:30. And it was like, sometimes you think, I just need a bit of a break. I've got things to do, just a little bit of break for my children. The day when he can sleep as long as he likes, he's up at 6:30, and then you've got to play games with it. Oh my God, it's hard work, So what to speak of the Supreme Father? We've rejected our Father, we've rejected Krishna for millions of lifetimes. It's described that we've turned our face away from God. Right? I'm not interested. Right? Now if someone's like kind of turn, like, just imagine if you've got a friend and they're just like, you know, you've done everything for this friend, you know, you've given up everything, you've said, hey, come and move into my house, I know you're having a tough time, I'm going to come and move in, me casa, S2 casa, my house is your, help yourself to food, do whatever you like, you know, you don't have any money just now, no problem, I'll pay you all my wages, I'll go out to work, you can just have fun, I'll pay for your holidays, and at the end of everything, then they just like go away, they don't say thank you, and they just, not only that, you know, they just ghosting you, you know, they've blocked you, it's like, what is this? I don't want anything to do with you. Get out of my life, you know? How horrible, you know? But yet we've done much, much worse to Krishna for millions of lifetimes. We've rejected him. I don't want to know anything about Krishna. And even as devotees, you know, sometimes we think, yeah, all right, you know, I'll do a bit for you, Krishna, but now it's my time, you know? Yeah, I've read a bit of Bhagavad Gita today, now it's time for me, you know? But Krishna never gives up on us. He accompanies us life after life after life after life. Sits within the heart as the Paramatma, as the super soul. He never gives up. And he's just waiting for us to turn back to him. And even though we've rejected him life after life, he still keeps trying to encourage us. He pops up in our life. Have you ever noticed sometimes you might be trying to forget about Krishna? Right? It's like, oh, I don't want to think about Krishna today. And then something will just pop up. You're in the library, and then all of a sudden you pick, or maybe you're watching a film or something, and suddenly Hare Krishna just pops up in the film. It's like, oh my God! It's like Krishna's just popping up. I remember that one day, I was distributing books in Glasgow, and I was having a really tough day, you know? And I just thought, oh, I'm just going to stop this. And I walked into Waterstones, you know? I just thought, I just want to forget about Krishna for a bit. I went into Waterstones and I picked up some book. I can't even remember what the book was. It had nothing to do with Krishna, but I picked it up, and somehow or another there was something about Hare Krishna in there. And I was like, oh my God, this is a sign from Krishna. So I put the book down and I went and got back on with distributing books. But the point is, Krishna all the time is trying to encourage us, hey, you know, you'll be happy. Come back to me, take shelter of me. So yeah, this is the Supreme Father. He's not getting frustrated. He's not saying, you know, okay, well, you know, forget you. No, he never gives up.
Just an instance I remember Bhakti-Ras telling me one time when you saw the Krishna or devotees pop up. Bhakti-Ras was doing some collecting for the temple, doing some charity work, and he was having a bit of a difficult day, and he went into this pub, and the television was on, and it was Kermadas giving a vegetarian cookery class. There was all these pundits around with pints in their hand, looking at this Hare Krishna devotee giving this vegetarian. And he was just so enlivened that he saw a fellow devotee,
Yeah.
and there were all these other people who had got no idea about it.
Yeah.
So were watching. You know,
Yeah, these little kind of Krishna miracles happen all the time. The more we become Krishna conscious, the more we see these Krishna miracles in our everyday life. And, you know, and someone would say, oh, you know, someone who's like, you know, how should we say, maybe like an atheist, and like, well, that's just a coincidence. If you analyse, what is a coincidence? A coincidence means I don't know. Like, this happened by coincidence. Well, it's just a convenient way of saying I don't know how it happened. But it's like, for instance, if we don't live our life on the premise that everything just happens by chance, right? I'm not going to set my alarm tomorrow because I think I'll probably just wake up at the right time to go to work. I'm not going to I'm going down to London on the weekend. I'm just going to wander along to the train station, and just by chance there'll be a train that's going. I'm cooking the feast in the temple on Sunday, and hopefully by chance there'll be all the right ingredients in the kitchen, you know. No one lives their life that everything happens by chance. We plan our days, do we not? You know, and when we don't plan our days, does the day go well? Or is it usually a bit of a write-off, right? If we don't plan our day, failing to plan means planning to fail. We live our life based on the premise that if I actually try and, you know, put some intelligence into my life, things will work out properly. So why do we think that everything's just happening by chance? No. So we see these Krishna miracles all the time. Krishna's just popping up all the time, knocking on the door. Hey, don't forget about me. I'm here. I'm here. Or sometimes we're just walking down the street. I don't want to think about Krishna today. And then you're walking down the street, and then there's devotees singing and dancing in the streets. Oh, okay, thanks, Krishna. Yeah. Krishna wants us to come back to him more than we want to go back to him. But if we read the Bhagavad Gita, we live the Bhagavad Gita, and we associate with devotees, we will also increase our desire to go back and be back home, back to Godhead. Thank you. I think we will stop there now. And we'll move on to the next part. Srila Prabhupada ki. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavad Gita as it is ki. Nitai Gaur Brahmananda. Gaur back to Brenda ki.